again on behalf of the iMoot team, and I do always enjoy your presentations at iMoot. But yeah, thanks again for doing this. And from what I caught from the last one, I'm looking forward to it. I'll join in a bit more this time. So over to you guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Shane.
Thanks for having us. Yes, a very see, that's my German accent now coming through. A very warm welcome. There we go. From the both of us here. Before we start with the content of our presentation, let me just explain that Michael will be leaving at about 4 o'clock. He's going to do the first part of the presentation because he's got a different engagement that he cannot postpone. But you'll be in my safe hands, and everything will be fine, so no need to worry. Before we introduce the method of peer advice in a bit more detail, we thought it would be possibly a good idea, because it can be quite a personal thing and people need to talk about problems, to make sure that you do feel in safe hands. And we'd like to introduce ourselves quickly, so that you don't have these weird silhouettes, but you have a bit more of a rounded picture of the both of us. So Michael is going to introduce himself first.
Right, my name is Michael Tighe, like something you might wear. I'm a US American and Irish, and have been living in Cologne, Germany since 1984, so practically a German too. I spent most of my time, most of my professional energy in helping people to lead virtual teams around the world. So I work a lot in the corporate sector, helping people optimize their cross-cultural competencies and communication abilities in the virtual space. So I train a lot of leaders and also coach people in virtual issues, and that's where we got the idea of doing a peer advice session for Moodle, because peer advice is a kind of tool that I use every day with corporate leaders and helping them resolve their dilemmas. Of course, the technique can also be used for Moodle course creators and helping them to resolve their own Moodle dilemmas. So in addition to that, I'm also at a couple universities in Germany, the University of Essen-Duisburg and the University of Applied Sciences in Cologne for cross-cultural management and cross-cultural competence, so international business school, master's programs in cross-cultural management issues and skills. So that's me briefly, and I'll pass on the microphone to Stephan.
Try to be as brief. My background is that I'm what you could call a re-import. My wife re-imported her husband. I wanted to qualify as a teacher in Germany for English and education studies, and ended up being a teacher for German and English in England. That's because I never went back from a student exchange, just decided I liked it so much there that I stayed. And in 2002, I met my wife at a wedding in Germany, and then in 2004, I moved back there. So I live now about 200 yards away from where I used to grow up. What you see there is my staff picture from the Essen Adult Education College, also called Volkshochschule Essen. It's a college where you can learn basically anything from computing skills, ICT, programming languages, to painting, drawing, photography. But the biggest number of lessons that we actually do is in languages, and I'm one of the subject leaders in the languages team. And with my background from the English school sector, where ICT is being used far more extensively in teaching in schools than in Germany, quickly people realized that I should be the guy to go to when it's about using ICT for teaching. And I made sure that we got a Moodle in 2007 at the Volkshochschule Essen. Took me about 3/4 of a year to hassle people and to use Indian water torture till they gave in. And the reason why I chose Moodle was that I had experience with Moodle when I was teaching at the university after I returned to England, to Germany. I was working in the English department there, and it was too much hassle to get a Blackboard course room at the university. So I set up my own Moodle, used that, and then when I had my Blackboard course room, I thought that was a wise decision to use Moodle because I didn't like the look and feel of Blackboard there at all. So, and the students agreed with me. With the student feedback, they preferred Moodle too, and that was the reason why I then decided to use that learning management system to be incorporated into the Volkshochschule Essen. I work on the side as well. That's why you don't see Volkshochschule Essen at the bottom, but edumote.com. That's my freelance job because I don't have any kids and any hobbies, so I thought I might do that. And that's where I can use, do all the things that are sometimes difficult to do when you are involved in a whole big of a city administration where things have to be tightly controlled and where you have to ask lots of people for permission. So I have now my little space where I don't have to ask for permission, but sometimes for forgiveness. So that's what I do. Michael and I have been doing lots of presentations together, both at iMoot and the German Moodle Moots, because we just clicked when we met at one of the first Moodle Moots in Germany. And we always learn from each other when we do those sessions. So I'm going to hand you back over. No, not quite. I'm going to tell you first what your advantages will be in being in this session. So the idea is to work on real life cases, dilemmas that you personally have, to exchange experiences and to then benefit from the resources that we have in the community here, and to perhaps see different perspectives, because it can be quite difficult to take this step back and see how other people may see that particular problem that we're having. You will learn this particular method to enable peers to help themselves. And Michael has just said it works very well in virtual space. He uses this very regularly with corporate people, with business managers. I've used it before. That was the first time when we did the first session. I used it only in virtual space, but we have been using this in our college in real life. Okay, so these should be the benefits that you can reap from this session. And I'm going to pass you over to Michael, who's going to quickly explain the method to you before we work on a real life case.
Thanks, Steph. Yes, peer advice has a few very structured steps, and the method works best when we really stick to that structure very religiously and in a very disciplined way. We noticed in our first session, I don't know how many people we had in there, Steph. We had maybe 20,
between 30 and 40, something like that.
Okay, a lot of people that the discipline aspect started to drift a little bit. I'll ask you, Heute, to be very disciplined. It works best really when we stick to this method. Peer advice is not a normal kind of conversation. It's a very structured method. So, and we can generate those additional perspectives if we stick to the method and then have our normal conversations afterwards. Let me just go over the steps that we have here. First, typically we have what's called a casting. So we have a group, a community, a team, and then we simply ask, what are the dilemmas that you're facing? What issues are out there? Here in the iMoot, we've tried to do that with the database, and then the database got broken, so we moved it to the forum. And just asking the iMoot community, what issues do they have? And the issues should relate to human interaction, not technical issues. So that was our casting. Here we did a casting in the form of a forum. In a face-to-face situation, we simply asked the group, what dilemmas are you facing? What hurdles do you need to overcome? And get a few cases or potential cases. After that, there's the spontaneous report of the case. So people just briefly describe what their dilemma is about, what they're facing, what issues do they have to overcome. Then after that, there's the clarification questions posed by the peers. Many times Carrie asks for examples of cases. In an international context, it might be intercultural issues, misinterpretations of people's behaviors because of cultural difference, or typical questions are, how can I, typical questions in the cross-cultural virtual space are, how can I influence my virtual team members to do what I want them to do or to do what needs to be done? Other issues are conflicts. Maybe somebody's having a conflict with a certain team member. How can they move on further? Very typical situations are also, how can I exert influence to my boss? How can I, when I see that my boss needs some guidance from me, how can I do that? Very dangerous kind of dilemma. So those are kinds of the relations that the issues that we're dealing with. Many times have to do with hierarchies, power, relationship, personal relationships, the intercultural aspects. So, but really, in a peer advice session, there's a very wide range of different issues, and that's the thing that's exciting about it. That we can really draw on the resources of our fellow team members to give us insight. Yeah, sort of the way the open communities work. Yeah, that's true. The method comes originally from therapy, so from family therapy, and we use it in a business context to talk about this kind of systemic issues with how our social systems are working in the business world. So mainly teams, international teams, typically, but doesn't have to be used only in that context. So back to the method, the case presenter presents their case. Then the peers, who are the coaches, have a chance, maybe about 10 minutes, to ask for clarification, so further clarification of the case. Then after that, the case presenter asks one key question that they want to be answered by the advisors or by the peers. So, for example, how can I influence my boss to be more respectful, demonstrate more respectful behavior towards me, for example? Might be a key question. After that, the case presenter is given a variety of methods to choose from. So I'll show you those in a second. The case presenter is the one who's allowed to pick which method they would like applied to their case. After that, after the selection of the method, we move into the coaching session, which takes usually about 20 minutes or so. In the face-to-face environment, we take the coachee or the case presenter, we put them behind like a pinboard or a wall so that they concentrate only on listening to the suggestions or to the ideas, impulses that the others are talking about. So they're not distracted by facial expressions and things like that. They listen very attentively to the impulses that the others are giving. And that's the whole reason why we do a peer advice session, to get impulses, not complete solutions. So it's just really ideas. Many times the case presenter needs to sleep over these impulses. Many times they kind of move around in your brain in unpredictable ways and give impulses to other ideas on how to resolve the dilemma. So as a peer advisor, as a coach, we're not really interested in giving a complete solution to the case. That's for the case presenter to resolve and not for us as coaches to resolve. We're simply giving other perspectives. Many times we're locked into our own perspective when we face a dilemma, and there's this kind of tunneling, and the idea here is to really increase complexity, get a lot of ideas in there that work also on a subconscious level later on. So the coaches then offer their impulses in line with the key question, so they constantly visualize and concentrate on the key question. After those impulses are given, about 20 minutes usually, then there's the conclusion. The case presenter merely gives an initial impression. They do not go into a detailed explanation of what they're going to try to implement or what was good, what was not so good. They merely talk about their general impressions of these impulses and show their gratitude to their coaches, to the peers for having invested energy and time into their own particular dilemma. And with that, the method is over. The moderator, the facilitator makes clear, okay, we're now leaving this method. Now we're returning to normal life, normal conversations. And the case presenter takes it. It's maybe in the text chat or a flip chart or whatever. They take the results with them and let it sink in a little bit over time. Let's take a look at the different methods that we apply in the peer advice. So here we have a collection of some of the methods, not all of the methods, but some of them. You're probably familiar with brainstorming, just conventional brainstorming. A lot of people generate ideas. The ideas are not evaluated, not critiqued, just put out there. So with my key question, what are the things that I could do? Just getting the resources of the peer group to comment on that in a brainstorming session. We like to do that in the virtual space as a kind of chat exercise. Sometimes we'll get people to write down their ideas in a Word document and then copy paste them into the chat all at the same time so that we don't influence each other during the brainstorming session. We did a brainstorming session a couple of days ago in the iMoot where people were just typing directly into the chat. So that's a kind of conventional method you're probably pretty familiar with. The next method you might not be familiar with and is a really, besides being a very entertaining method, a really useful method, and we call it paradox brainstorming or upside down brainstorming, where the peers think about how can this person drive the situation to make it an absolute failure? What can we do to make the situation even worse and really an absolute failure? So we drive it to an extreme negative state. The purpose of this upside down brainstorming is then to take these negative impulses and then switch them around. And sometimes by doing so, we generate positive impulses that we wouldn't have thought of otherwise in a normal brainstorming session. So just to generate other perspectives there. A very interesting method. In some cases, our case presenters are so overwhelmed by the situation that they're in, the dilemma that they're in, that it's really hard to figure out, what can I do? What is the next step? And in those cases, the next little step you could take, and here the key word is little step, is quite useful to get them moving in the right direction. So the peers talk about little steps that are definitely moving in the right direction, giving the case owner some impulses for simple things that they can do so they're not locked in and frozen in their kind of dilemma. Sometimes we hear, as coaches, we hear other information that seems important to us than what the case presenter thinks is important. And that's part of the benefit of us offering an alternative perspective, is that we hear other things. And the two pieces of information method is also pretty interesting to get a kind of perspective shift for the case owner. So what else could be important? What seemed important to me as a detached listener here in this case? So a shift of emphasis. We've got the good advice method. I think you're probably familiar with that. You know, if I were you, I would, and so forth. Pretty straightforward advising method. We have sympathy-based methods like similar experiences. I think also pretty conventional. You're familiar with, you know, I once experienced something like that, and this is what I did, and this is what happened, and so forth. So a little bit approaching storytelling. And then we have the description of thoughts, feelings, and images. Maybe talking through metaphors. You know, the situation you described reminds me of that film, and so forth. Or I can see an image of you sitting in a chair in a corner of a room, and so forth. So what thoughts, feelings, images came to mind? And I think you can see here how these kinds of images, we plant them in the mind of the case presenter, and it works. A couple days later, these images are perhaps activated and generate other impulses, other perspectives on the situation. And then finally, many times you'll find the case presenter, the key question that they would like answered from our perspective of coaches is perhaps not the real question they should be asking themselves. So we have this other key question. So what other question might be of interest or useful for the case presenter? So how can we refocus off a completely different question? So that being also a kind of method in and of itself. Okay, but again, the basic idea here is to generate alternative perspectives, increase complexity for the case presenter, to pull on the group, the peer group, as a kind of pull on the resources of the group and use that kind of group intelligence. Let me go over, very briefly review the method again. So the case owner is going to present his or her case, about 10 minutes. The most common mistake here is that the case owner thinks everybody has to understand every detail about everything, and that is not the case. Even the most complex cases can be presented in a time frame of about 10 minutes. Many times it's other signals that we as coaches are listening for. We're listening for the maybe stress in the voice and so forth, the way people describe things and so forth. That's much more revealing than maybe a description of all the minutiae, all the different parties involved in a case. So we need to limit the case presenter's presentation to about 10 minutes. Then the peers ask the comprehension questions, only comprehension questions, and here I have to ask you to be very disciplined, only comprehension, no hidden suggestions. So not, have you tried, talking to the boss on the telephone? That is not that's a kind of suggestion. We really need to concentrate only on clarification questions for the method, and no own stories, talking about your experiences here just when we're asking for clarification. So we have to be aware. Sometimes people want to move directly into the solution, directly into a conversation, and when we're facilitating these sessions, we want to stop that, intervene, and say, okay, is that a clarification question? And then move on. So the case presenter asks their key question. Here we'll document that in the text chat. And then we go into the case. So the case owner listens and is not allowed to comment or speak, and the peers stick to the selected key question. After that, again, the conclusion as described before. Just very briefly, thank you very much for taking the time and energy, and and just basically talking about what they're going to take away, what struck them, or just a very kind of initial impression. So that is the method. Let me ask you, what questions do you have?
I think my comment for the moment, understanding questions.
About the method.
Yeah.
And I'll hand over to Stephan, who will work through the cases. Of course, if there are no cases here, that's a perfectly valid situation. We're offering the method to you to help you resolve dilemmas, to see the method in action. If there are no cases, then that's fine too. Here's an offer. So every community is different, every group is different, every team has its own kind of culture. So it's just what we're offering. But any questions on the method? Okay, I'm interpreting your silence as meaning there are no questions on the method.
Feel free to grab the microphone as well. Why only 2 pieces of information, Shane asks.
You can imagine if you had a group of, let's say typically we would have 6 or 7 coaches. peer coaches. So if everybody had 2 pieces of information that struck them, then with 7 people, that's 14 different, many times different pieces of information. Sometimes the same piece of information. It's an artificial kind of limit to focus the case presenter on 2 aspects per person. So that's 14 different aspects or 12 different aspects.
Quite often it's also easier. Creativity quite often needs restrictions. I found this in my teaching when I asked students to think of, 5 sentences having to do with their hobbies. It was more difficult for them than if I asked them, think of 5 sentences having to do with your hobbies, and each sentence must be 7 words long. Weirdly enough, this weird restriction that you have there generated more ideas. So quite often this works as well. So having only 2 pieces of information, I think focuses the group in a different way and can lead to only the most relevant pieces of information being given, and also people can think of them more easily, quite possibly.
I would also like to just one mention before I go, just here with these methods, think about using these methods as well in your forums in other contexts without going into a full-blown peer advice session. For example, upside-down brainstorming. When you're looking for a solution, think about turning things around and driving it really to an absurd opposite of what you're looking for, and then turn that around. Many times generates new impulses. So these techniques, we use them a lot in virtual meetings and also in asynchronous forums and so forth. So yeah, it is great. It would be really good to have a case that you could put it into action and see it actually demonstrated. It's fantastic. Okay, with those words, I would like to thank you for listening, and I'll pass on the microphone to Stephan. I hope you have some interesting cases, and wish you luck with this method, and hope it's useful for you all. So, Stephan, good luck, and thank you.
Thank you, Michael. See you soon. Thanks for taking the time before your appointment. Now, that's great.
Sure. Bye. Thanks, Jane. Bye, everybody.
Yes. I'm just going to give you some thinking time. If you want to doodle or something, just write down and see whether there is something that you perhaps want to ask the others in there. I mean, we're a small group, but if I get involved as well, then we are 5 people that can help one another out. If there's nothing, then that's, as Michael said, that's perfectly fine. It may be useful to then have a look at the recording of the first session of our On Your Case session, just to see how it works. There's also the chat I put in a PDF file as a resource in our course in the session space, and just to think how you could use it either in real life. We found it at a time when we were really restructuring our college personnel-wise because of personnel cuts and so on and so forth. There were lots and lots of issues going on, and we found this peer advice method really helped. The thing that's important is that when you have a case, it should not be a case involving another person that is in the room as one of your peers. So it would not be a good idea to sort of say, and just taking you as an example, Shane, I just can't get along with Shane. He always, shoots down any idea that I have. That's not going to work. Because somebody tried to do this when we were doing this, and is he like that? I never found that Shane was like this. And it works really well in a real space when you've got the time to just sit down together. It works in a virtual online live classroom, the one that we're using now. And Michael and I are thinking along the lines of trying to see in how far one can actually move this method into an asynchronous environment, using Moodle course, for example. Should be not too difficult, actually. It will lose a lot of the dynamic with, lots of ideas being generated quickly. At the same time, it could win because people have got a lot more time to think about, what they want to give to the person who's got the dilemma. And sometimes it also helps the person to just write down their dilemma as well. Because when you're writing down, you're reflecting in a completely different way. So if there's somebody who wants to present a case, just grab the microphone and say, here I am, I want to present my case. That would be great. And if not, that's perfectly fine by me. I've got a lawn to be mown, so I can do that as well. But to be honest, I prefer it if you gave me an excuse not to do it today. Yes, we did, Carrie. This is your chance, now that you're back, if you wanted to present a case, because I think you got most of the information about what a real case in this kind of scenario would be. So if there's a pressing issue that you have involving people and Moodle, then feel free to grab the microphone and ask us all for your advice, and I will guide you through the peer advice process step by step.
I'm out of breath from running.
Oh dear.
Literally. Most of my problems tend to be somewhat technical, other than trying to convince people for buy-in. I work with a lot of different school districts, and it's like I have to explain to them why Moodle is better than something else. And because we have the whole hosting piece as to whether or not they want to host themselves or if they want to host someplace else, and a lot of them have had problems with some of the Moodle partners in the US, so they're hesitant to go with them. So I don't know if that really, because I own my own company, so I don't really work with a whole team of people anymore, if that makes any sense.
It would be, yeah, it would be relevant if you can think of one particular case rather than a general one, one thing where you think, I've got this problem at the moment and I need a resolution for it. This would be really the criterion, because that way we can actually help in a lot more concrete way. So if you've got a problem, and I can also, assure everybody, we forgot to tell you this, we will not you can change names, and we will not allow this session recording to be put up on YouTube for everybody to see on the World Wide Web. That will be just the session recordings available to people who have attended iMoot. So it cannot be sort of found by accident when people sort of look on YouTube for something.
Well, in that case, I'd love to do something, which I can't do, non-Moodle related with my ex-husband, since you have you said all that background. No, I'm kidding. I'll listen in. I'll listen in because I can't. Well, you know what? I have a problem. I do have one trainer that does work with me. And recently, she's decided that she's worth more. For instance, whatever amount I get paid for the training, she's a friend also. That's the problem. She lives a few blocks away, a few doors away. She's a friend. So say I get paid X for the training. She doesn't think that I should get any override, even though it's all my contacts and people who are getting her out. So now she's kind of arguing with me, and she thinks that she could do what I do. Meanwhile, she signed a contract and is trying to kind of go around me, if that makes any sense. I don't know if that's a good kind of case.
It could be, yeah. So let me just try and recap. So this person being employed by you, or is she sort of self-employed and worked on a contract basis for you?
Well, I 1099 her. She's one of my 1099 trainers. I don't know if that means anything to you. So she works as a consultant for me. She's not an employee to me, but I get her the jobs, and I handle all the finances and all the agreements and arrangements, and then I send her in, and then I pay her. But she gets her work through me, but she's not employed through me. I don't know if that makes sense to you.
Yeah, no, it just makes sense. Do you feel that we have all the information that we need, or is there something that we need to add? I just want to make sure that before we go to the next phase, because that's the important thing about this method, to actually stick to the method properly, because the results tend to be a lot better. So if you feel that you've given us all the information that we need, then we could go to the next phase.
She's a, do you mean that she's trying to buy? Yes, she's trying to bypass me and it's my company and I get her the work. I've also, she was very tech savvy, but she had no idea what Moodle was, or she had no idea how to use an interactive whiteboard. I mean, since then she's gotten a smart board,
Can I just
but
interrupt you for a
I trained
second?
her.
Because we're already now in the second phase, before we actually get into the second phase, could you type into the chat the question that you want answered by us? So a question could be, how can I blah, 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 or what would you blah, blah, blah. So the question that would be your dilemma, really. So that we've got it on record. And when we've got the question, then we can ask clarification questions about the case that Carrie just presented.
Is that a good question?
Okay. How should I handle a trainer who wants to bypass me and thinks she's worth more than she's actually worth? Okay. You've all heard Carrie's case. Are there any more questions you need to understand the problem? Be careful not to phrase your question in a way that there are hidden suggestions. So don't ask questions like, have you thought about da 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 da? But it's just really questions about understanding the problem rather than already giving advice. And if you do, feel free. We were so few people. Just grab the microphone and ask her, ask Carrie directly. Okay. So everybody seems to understand the dilemma completely. Fine. In that case, we can already go to the third phase. And to do that, we need to ask Carrie which of those peer advice methods she wants us to use to help her. So I just put the slide on with the different methods. Just let me ask you, you ran out after Michael talked about these methods. Is that right, Carrie?
Pretty much. I caught most of this, but I was running around grabbing what she needed. So yes, I did hear most of it.
Okay. Right. And Anna has actually written a question quickly. She asked, is she valuable for your work?
Yeah. Can I explain why, or is that not something?
You can explain why? Yeah.
Yes, she is, because I have another company that basically, there's another company in Virginia and I'm in New York, and the company in Virginia hires me to hire her. She's been certified by them to do training. I can't travel because I'm a single mom and she can. So if I'm going to continue that work, I need her. And part of it is that now she wants to bypass me and go directly to that company. Does that make sense? So I was making $100 a day off of her. Now I'm down to $50 a day, and now she doesn't want it to be anything a day.
Okay. Are there any more questions before we ask Carrie which method she'd like us to use?
Yes,
because
she babysits my daughter and helps me when I'm stuck. So she is a good friend who has helped me out. I can't sever ties because I'm a single mom and I need her around, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Any more questions?
Don't work with friends. You always think that, I don't know which method would be best.
So brainstorming would be just, we give you lots and lots of input what you could do. Upside down brainstorming would be, how can we make the situation a lot worse for you? First little step you could take would be just, what would be the first thing you should do now to actually move towards a resolution of the problem? Two pieces of information would be, sometimes the person presenting the case, different things are important about the dilemma than people who are sort of slightly more removed from the problem, and they could give you, two pieces of information that you should that you actually talked about, but perhaps are not that aware of, and that you should perhaps consider in a bit more detail? Good advice would be just that we say, if I were you, I would. Similar experiences, perhaps, we have as a group, people have had similar experiences in working with friends. Description of thoughts, feelings, and images would be that, people sometimes have metaphors, they think, when you talk about this problem, it's like you are in that film X and Y, or I see you in that chair doing this, this, and that. And the other key question would be, is the question that you phrased for us actually being far more removed from the problem? Is that really the question you should ask yourself, or is there another question that you should ask yourself to solve the dilemma?
I'm guessing maybe the first steps I could take, because I'm getting at an impasse with her where we're hardly speaking right now, and we're friends.
Right. So I'll just draw the line to demarcate in the chat that the next phase starts now, and the method is first little steps. So it should be just the first things that Carrie could do to to start resolving the situation. So any ideas you have, if you don't have your microphone not switched on, or you don't want us to hear you, type into the chat the first little things that Carrie could do to solve that situation.
One thing I did do. Am I allowed to talk now?
At the moment, you should just listen, unless it's a really, really important piece of information that we need to be able to help you.
Nope, I'm sorry.
Okay, cool. In that case, yes, you just have to listen now, and it's really hard. Especially hard when nothing's coming in. Okay, and to break that step even more down, Anna, so she should basically sort of find the time to meet up and just talk about this problem, and then describe how Carrie is feeling. Am I getting you right there, Anna? Okay. Right. Any other ideas for first little steps that Carrie could take? While people are thinking, there's one. Shane has got a question, so yes, Carrie, feel free to answer that. We'll have to move away slightly from the method. And the reason is we're quite a small group at the moment. So you can imagine if there's a bigger group of 7, 8 people, then, yeah, or you can rephrase it as a statement, perfect. You could just, yeah. Thanks for saving me, Shane. Any other ideas? And again, if you want to talk, just grab the microphone. As far as I know, you can just click on the microphone button yourselves and talk. Uh-huh. And if there's any ideas that Carrie could do, what could Carrie do as a next step to just move towards a solution? We don't want to solve the whole problem for her, but just to get the ball rolling. We understood her. I think. Perhaps, since things are very slow trickling in, we can try a second method as well, just so that you can get some more ideas. If there's one more little step you want to type, just put anything, a plus sign or something in the text chat and hit enter, so that we know that you just need some time writing if you don't want to speak. Okay, yeah, we'll just wait for Shane to give his next step. But Shane, feel free to use the microphone if you want.
Okay, I'll talk.
Perfect, thank you.
So we're still on the, sorry, I'm keep jumping in and out. So we're still on just
the next little step.
Yeah. I was thinking a suggestion, maybe both parties just writing down what their ultimate outcome is. So I was thinking, Carrie, you write down what you think the outcome should be, and this other person writing down what they think the outcome should be as well, what ultimately they would like from it.
Mm-hmm.
Her outcome might be to take over my business.
Okay. Any more? Lisa and Sarah have their microphones switched on, so it could be that they want to talk, but just are a bit shy, reluctant at the moment. Thank you, child. Oh, okay. I'll see, child. Not at the moment, Anna. Oh, actually, so yes, Anna, you can. Sorry, Carrie can't. You can, Anna. Mm-hmm. Somebody managed to get the hand raise working. I never did. Yes, Charles, go ahead. Hmm?
The thought also is that is probably deciding what's more important to you, Carrie, is keeping the person more important than keeping the business, as in is the possibility there of I'm asking this as a question, is the possibility there of just getting someone else to do the job?
So her next step should be to actually sit down and actually consider those two options. Am I right?
Yes, yeah. So because in reality it might be just, what are the possible solutions for this too, rather than getting someone else, or do we have to work through this situation?
Unfortunately, she's been certified, and that we've paid for her certification, so it's not an option, at least in this case.
Okay, right.
And I will say, I have a conference call that's supposed to come in at about 10:30, just so you know.
Okay.
It might be a few minutes late, but I just want to forewarn you. That's in like a little like 8 minutes.
Okay. In that case, perhaps we shouldn't try another method, because you will not see the end of that then. And
I'm sorry.
No, don't worry. Don't worry. This is just an offer, the peer advice, and then in that case we move. Yeah, we move to the. Yeah, that would be. Just for clarification, that's a different method, which is great, because that would be the method. Description of thoughts, feelings, and images. What associations come to my mind? Okay, yeah, Jens is asking. So the next step should be to try and find out whether you can do the training online using Big Blue Button or something else, so that you don't need your colleague anymore. Just to stick with the method, next step would be to just find out if that's possible. Okay, right. Just so that we can actually finish the case properly, we just move back to the fourth step. We just did step 3. Fourth step is basically asking Perry, and now you could talk again. What are you going to take away from our peer advice? And then it's always good form to thank everybody for taking their time and working on your case.
Well, I know that we've done some of the training virtually, and the problem is that you have to be a certified trainer, and they won't certify somebody without going to locations. So that piece, she can do some of the virtual trainings. I can't. I think I like the idea of going over the job descriptions, and I think maybe it's just we really need to sit down and look at our contract. Be like, this is what you are contracted to do, because that's basically what her job description is. And it says in the contract blatantly that she cannot work for somebody that she's working with through me. She just thinks that she's worth more now. So that's, and I need her as a friend, but at the same token, my business this year with, I don't know if you've heard about, many of you from the US, but Common Core, it has essentially destroyed education. And the Common Core has taken all of the funding away from professional development and put it towards strictly Common Core. And as part of that, she is working for a company that does student management systems through me. So that's not affected because they still need training on student management systems, whereas the part that I do primarily is the professional development and training. So I kind of need her, but at the same token, I guess I really need to sit down and go over those job descriptions. And I tried to get her to see it in my way, but she thinks that as a friend, I should be giving her jobs because she's struggling financially also. But she doesn't see that I'm struggling financially, so I need to, I had a divorce this year. It destroyed, a lot of my savings. So I need just as much as she's struggling. But I thank you all for your advice. I think I'm going to sit down with her and go over the contract and kind of clarify the fact that, we have a working contract, which means she does work for me. And these are the parameters in which she does, if that makes sense.
Have we focused you? Is there anything you take away from the session now? Something that you think, I will definitely do this, or will definitely not do that, as a result of our peer advice?
I will definitely try to make her see things from my shoes again. And I am confident that I am right, since I got her the training and I got her, no kidding. I got her the training, I trained her, and I got her, doing the job. But I definitely will take away the part about clarifying the job descriptions, and maybe if I have to present it as a company standard, even though it's in the contract, which should be standard enough, but maybe I have to physically write that out and say, this is what your job description is, and clarify the contract. I wonder if she read it. It's a 6-page contract.
Yeah, exactly. It could just be that even. Oh, excellent. In that case, can you thank everybody who's offered their advice to you?
Thank you all. This was great. I'm sorry I had to run out, but I'm glad I made it back in time. I was worried I wouldn't, get to see the process and it take place. This is great.
Excellent. Okay. Thank you all. Are there any, having done the process, are there any questions? Oh, yes, I forgot to change the slide again. So this is your little German lesson. The German for feedback is feedback. The German for and is und, and the German for questions is Fragen. So you learned something really important today. Anything you want to give us feedback? Any questions you still have? If not, if questions come to you, please do use the session forum so that we can answer your questions then. Okay. Thank you for presenting, Kerry. There's a badge for that, by the way, so I will be awarding that in a minute. And everybody's going to go, oh no, there was a badge. Excellent. In that case, let me thank you so much for your time and attention. Great, thanks for being there. If you want to see a different method in action, then have a look at the rerun of the first session of this particular presentation, where we use the upside down brainstorming as well. And then, if there's any questions, feel free to either drop us a line by email, or please, use the session forums. Then everybody can benefit from your input. Oh, I'm blushing now, Shane. Yeah, I don't see myself as a strong moderator, but that's because I so often work with Michael, who's so experienced and so routine in so many things, that yeah, I've got always somebody to learn from. And it is very easy to jump ahead and get off topic, but as you practice the method more often, it becomes not second nature, because it is still a slightly artificial situation, but people stick to it far more reliably, and the results get better and better and better. So it's just something that people have to practice, like anything, really. Okay. Any other comments, thoughts?
How do you do this? Is this something that you work on where, like, you're working with an organization and you do this like on a monthly basis and say, does anybody have a question or a problem that they want to work out? Or do you wait until there is a problem and then do it? Because then isn't it bringing more attention to, I don't know, I'm just curious how you kind of structure this. I'm going to apologize if my phone rings, so.
No, don't worry. A lot of organizations use it as like as you said, as a recurring meetup, where they say every first Friday at 2:00 we meet for our peer advice session, and then people can submit cases already. And then at the start of the peer advice session, people decide which case is being discussed. Or sometimes they say we just take our time to have all cases discussed, and they do that. Some organizations use it on this other basis, where they have got like a team ready, and then the person who has a case can just sort of call in a meeting to use this as a peer advice, and then find a time where it's suitable and possible for everybody. So both systems work. During our restructuring process, we had regular meetings where we did this. So we met up regularly, and now it's a case of people saying, I've got this problem, and rather than just talking, at the water cooler, I want a more controlled process for my issue.
And do you find it's better in person or online? Which do you like better?
It is actually easier to control the process online. If you've got a big group and they're in person, quite quickly the discussion needs to be even more tightly controlled. It's easier to tell you, when somebody types something in the chat, to say, hang on, that's for the next session, and then people sort of stop typing, because I think there's this little buffer still with a virtual live environment. There's still this little buffer before you say something or before you type something, and in a real life situation, people are a lot more willing to say something straight away.
I had a feeling that was the case.
Yeah, so it does work quite well in a live classroom, and we'll have to see, if we find an organization that is willing to try out using, this peer advice method in an asynchronous environment using Moodle, then we can report back to that about that during next iMoot possibly. But we would have to find people willing to try it out in Moodle.
I have a bunch of, but you're saying in Moodle or in a virtual classroom? I mean, Big Blue Button's not Moodle per se.
No, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, now we're using a live online classroom, and the thing would be to try out how it works in an asynchronous environment like Moodle.
I got you.
And we haven't got any institutions at the moment that we can use that with. But things always crop up, and it could be something that we do during the next couple of months, and then we've got another session ready for next iMoot.
I mostly work with school districts, so I'm wondering if any of I do meetings with like the principals, like bi-monthly meetings for principals. So
Yeah.
teaching them Moodle and next steps and different technology pieces. So I wonder if that's something I could bring to them, whereas they can, the teachers that they're having conflicts with, so
Yeah.
that the principals can all give advice as to how to handle the rough teacher situations.
So just to make sure that I understand right, so they're all principals who are on the same level, and they all have, the different schools and would have issues in those schools.
Yeah, they were all principals or administrators. They were all administrators. They're in charge of overseeing the teachers. So if that team wants to bring their problems, since they're all in different schools.
Yeah, that seems to be a good scenario in my view. This method is being used.
If I had Danielle in this, like if I had a problem with Danielle, and we're all administrators, and I had Danielle in it, I think it would be hard to have this conversation with her being part of it. So if you're part of the same group, they get like that separation between like the principals who can all give advice to other principals would be better than peers in some aspects.
It's absolutely vital that the problem does not involve another person involved in the peer advice process directly. So, I think you were away then. I gave the example of sort of saying, if I was working with Shane, I couldn't propose my case saying, Shane always shoots down my ideas the second I utter them without even listening properly. That would not be an ideal scenario. But if you've got those principals working together and they've got their cases from their own schools and nobody's involved in this dilemma is actually present during the peer advice process, and possibly, the best thing would be if names aren't named, then that would be a very, very good scenario. We know of a couple of schools who are using this method. Teachers are using this method to find advice about cases that they have got with their classes, problem students, things like this. So that works well too.
You know what I think I'd like to see? I'd like to see this with students, because we used to do something where we did hot thoughts, cold thoughts, and stuff like that about a scenario. Mm-hmm. But we're doing conflict resolution as young as my daughter. They have conflict resolution monitors. So when the kids have a problem, they're trying to teach them different ways to work it out. And she's only in 4th grade. I'd love to see this in like a primary school or a secondary school where kids are having problems, especially like the kids who are having problems with bullies. So like the support group of kids that meet together, that might be a really good way for them to analyze what's happening when they're being bullied and give each other solutions and ideas.
Yeah, definitely. That'd be good. Any more comments, questions? Okay. In that case, thank you all for being there. That's brilliant. Really enjoyed it. And I look forward to seeing you around in the iMoot sessions. But as I said at the beginning, got a very, very cramped schedule at the moment, so I won't be in all day on Saturday, and I can probably see some sessions on Sunday morning my time and Sunday evening my time, and the rest I'll just have to be with you in spirit. So thanks again. It's been great having you. And it's been great being a part of this as well.
Well, Stephan, just want to say on behalf of the iMoot team and everyone attending, thank you very much for giving your time today.
More than welcome, more than welcome. It's great. Okay, bye then.